Well, welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. This is Patrick, and I'm happy today to be showing you our first peek at the Forms Designer, which we hope to replace InfoPath Designer with. I have with me Kirby. Kirby, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Patrick.
Great to have you here. So we have been working on this for quite a long time, and we're finally ready to show you the initial preview today. Really happy that all of you could make it. Thank you for being here. We have really three things in mind with InfoPath Designer replacement, which is what we're calling Forms Designer. Now, the first thing is, of course, to replace InfoPath Designer, and that means the majority of the functionality. We probably won't do every single esoteric feature in the first release, which we're planning in December, but we will, over the time, fill all of the major features and hopefully have the majority of them working by December. And also we want to keep the UI, the user interface, to be somewhat similar to what we had with InfoPath, so that you don't have to learn something completely new. So that's the muscle memory. And obviously we want to make sure that we're supporting browsers now, so that it's less work to install, it's less work to use, and that's really the first priority, is to replace InfoPath Designer, but also to make it easier to use. We're filling gaps that have been there in InfoPath forever. So one of the biggest gaps that we see is with debugging. It's very difficult to debug rules in InfoPath today. So we're going to be providing some way to easily do that on the fly. Some of you have already seen snippets or samples of us doing this with your forms. We'll add a command history section to your form to show what the Q rules commands are doing. It's going to be kind of like that. It's going to be something that is automatically available in every form. You won't have to add it. You'll just basically click on something at the bottom of the form to see the debugger, every single rule that has run with the results. So it'll be very easy for you to see where something went wrong, and also easy for us to help you debug it and fix it. We're also providing what we call these guardrails. So we want to make sure that people do things in the best practice way, say on the road. And you'll see in the demo today, when Kirby adds a control to the form in the designer, one thing we're doing is we're telling people to make sure that they add a field, bind it to a field in the data source when you add the control to the form, instead of just creating new field 1, field 2, or whatever, and not naming them correctly. You can do that with InfoPath Designer today. There is that kind of it lets you do bad things, right? So we're trying to prevent that. We also have new features we're adding. So we have all of these new things that we've been doing with FormsViewer, and we'll talk more about that in a second. And we want to come up with a generic framework so that we can add these reusable widgets or sections, what we call XML template parts, to your forms. So those are the gaps we're trying to fill, obviously supporting the modern browsers. And then we have new features. So these new features would correspond to some of those widgets. The ability to modernize your forms to make them look good on different devices. That's the cascading style sheet stuff, the floating labels we've been demoing this year, the task panes that fly out, being able to make your data connections dynamic so that you can actually move your form from test to production with minimal hassle, right? No, don't need to update the form, just move it. It automatically senses where it's at, automatically connects those data connections on that new site. That's a key thing. And all of these features should be added to your form from the designer with minimal effort, right? So you won't have to go through a long, laborious process. Today we've encapsulated these techniques in what we call XTPs, and we've given you instructions for how to do it. So it's relatively simple, but we want to make it even easier to do in the form designer. And then we have things like custom controls, signing, things that we've been demoing this year with auto logout, auto refresh, the ability to improve security with device authentication via phone, and other things. So why has it taken us so long? So we're about a minute away from the demo here, but I wanted to just respond to what's probably on most of your minds. It's like, well, why have we been taking so long to actually get this done? The main reason is Microsoft keeps pushing out the end of life. They started saying in January of 2014 that InfoPath was dead, and that lo and behold, in December of 2023, you're not going to be able to use it anymore after that. So that was the original comment from Microsoft, and they've now pushed it out to 2026. What we're seeing with the SharePoint Designer 2010 workflows just this next month is there's a lot of backlash from users on the 2010 workflows, which they've said are going to stop working November 1st, but they haven't provided any way for people to migrate to 2013 SharePoint Designer workflows. I mean, you can export it to Visio, you can import it, but it's not quite the same. There's some features that are missing. So they're probably going to have to push back the date even further, perhaps. But right now, the date is April 1st, 2026. That's it's almost 6 years from now. So the other reason is that we've been doing a lot of work in FormsViewer. Many of you know that we've actually been adding new features. We've been you can look at our page on our version release history. We've been doing a ton of stuff, and of course the whole idea of this this standalone rather than what's going to break first, right? Well, InfoPath Designer probably won't break first because it doesn't really have this dependency on SharePoint like InfoPath Form Services had, or the filler had when you're trying to submit to SharePoint. Designer, you could save the files locally, you could upload them, so there wasn't as much of a dependency on InfoPath Designer. So those are reasons why it took us so long. We did hire some new development staff earlier this year. We decided to hire actually three developers to help Jimmy with this effort, and so we're really happy to show you this first glimpse today. And Kirby, I think before we demo, I would just like to show people what we had. So today in FormsViewer, you can click on a form template and you'll see this design tab. And the design tab is there to give you access to tools. So we have the command builder, we have the SharePoint list mappings that you can create. We have, and obviously we can select one of these to see what it looks like. This is a simpler one. Okay, so it's not connected to, this is a demo site, so it's not connecting to SharePoint. We've got the JSON XML builder. We've got some very simple ways to edit rules. This actually works. You can round trip to rules here, and you can add data connections and manage resource files. But we don't have any canvas editor. That's the major, and these tabs are kind of, they're really, the UI is really first generation, right? So we really need to improve this and make it look a lot better. And that's what we're going to show you today. So Kirby, I'm going to switch to you. You ready?
All right. Yep. All right. So let me know if you can now see my screen.
Yep.
All right. So here's how the new Forms Designer looks right now. And as you may notice, we've preserved the general look and feel based on the InfoPath Designer. So let's have a quick tour of the new Forms Designer. We have here a section where you can find the text formatting tools. You'll see that we only have a few, but in the next Forms Designer versions, we'll add more to it. So here is the form canvas. Right now, we're seeing our internal expense report, which you may have already seen in our previous webinars and demos. This part is where you can add controls to the canvas. So right now we have 6 available controls, which are the most used controls in InfoPath. Right here, we have the data fields pane, similar to InfoPath Designer, where we can see the available groups and fields in the form. And at the bottom of the pane, this is where we can add a field or a group in the schema. And here at the rightmost part, this is where the properties pane is located. So when we click on a control in the canvas, say, for example, this button, the properties of that control will be shown in this area. And lastly, at the top of the properties pane, there's a save button here and another button to preview the form and download. So now I'll show you how we can simply add a text box and a label using the Forms Designer. So we'll call it version. So let's first add its label at this part. where we can easily see it once we preview it in the browser. So let's type in version. And let's add some text formatting. Let's make it bold, italic. Let's also change the size of the text. And once that's added, let's go ahead and add the text box here. So let's click on this drop down, click text box, and click on the plus button here. And as you can see, it highlighted the data fields pane, and it's waiting for us to bind that text box to a field. So let's go ahead and create a new field here. So just select this default value here called add field and click the plus button. And it's now going to allow us to add the name for our new field, and just retain the type, which is default one, the text, and then click add. And once that's done, you're going to see that the version field is added in our schema. And we'll select that and click on the button here called done. So it's going to bind to our new text box here. So let's save this, and let's try to wait for a few seconds. And let's preview it by clicking the open button. All right, so as you can see here, the changes we've added in the FB Designer or Forms Designer is now reflecting in this in our form. So to make sure that it is backward compatible, let's try downloading the form and open it in InfoPath Designer. So let's go back to Forms Designer and click download, and let's go to our download page here. Let's open it in the design mode, and as you can see in our canvas here, the version label and the text box is added in this part as well. So that's it for the quick demo of the Forms Designer.
That was so fast, Corey. If you have questions, please add those to the comment area. We look forward to answering any questions you have. So, it's a short demo today, but it is, I think, worth noting that we are round tripping. We are actually changing the view and actually round tripping it and opening up FormsViewer. It's a non-trivial operation, right? So you have to make sure you have the control IDs and make sure everything works. So there's quite a lot of work that went into that. Obviously, we have priorities moving forward. We're trying to get this shipped to you by the end of the year. And we have the following priorities. So rather than focusing on creating new forms from scratch, which we know is going to be a scenario down the road, we're really focused right now on enabling you, empowering you to make changes to existing forms. So you have an existing form, you want to make a simple change to it. We're gonna focus on that scenario, those use cases first. Obviously, those upgrades to your forms, adding CSS, adding the dynamic data connections, is also a huge priority. And finally, keeping the compatibility, because we know that we're not going to have support for everything in December, but we want to have something out there that allows you to start working with it. And if you find some feature that you just like, well, I used to be able to do this in InfoPath Designer, I can't do it in Forms Designer, you'll still be able to go back to InfoPath Designer, make the change, and then load it again in Forms Designer. So we're going to keep that two-way compatibility for the indefinite future, probably for a long time, if not ever. And that's a key priority for our beta as well. So beta is December, and if you're interested in being a beta tester in November, let me know. We are finishing features. We've got about 52 working days between now and then. Our team, our new developers in Nepal, they've got some vacations coming up. I think it's Diwali or something, but something like that. Anyway, so we're pushing really hard to get this stuff done, and we look forward to demoing again for you in December, and it will be available in in the it will automatically update FormsViewer with the design button changing, and that'll happen sometime, hopefully in December. Um, Once again, if you're not familiar with FormsViewer, you probably aren't on this. Everyone here probably is familiar with FormsViewer. We really have spent a lot of time over the last 5 years providing an easy way to migrate your forms to the future, and you don't have to learn Power Apps. You don't have to learn Power Apps and then realize that all the features you wanted aren't there. Repeating sections are hard. Collections are really hard. But we also wanted to add new features to your forms, to freshen them up, to modernize them for today's mobile-centric users. And of course, you get our support, and you get this. This is all available now in the SharePoint store. Notice FormsViewer does not require SharePoint. That is the major scenario, but we also have customers that use FormsViewer completely independently of SharePoint, so that's not a complete requirement. So, okay, we've got questions for you now, or answers. And Richard, thank you very much for adding that comment. The interface, yeah, we're trying to keep that muscle memory for you so that you don't have to completely learn something new. It helps to have things in generally the same location. Does anyone else have any questions for us? Really happy that you're here today for our initial demo of Forms Designer. We look forward to having another one soon. But any other questions for us today? So we'll wait here a few seconds, and that's really it for today. I want to thank you all for being here. We are recording this, and we'll get this up to YouTube. We don't have a package today. Oh, there's a question from Shane. How do I sign up for the beta? So we don't really have a beta sign up page. If you just want to email me, that would be great. We're keeping it relatively small, less than 20 people. So if we have a training coming in October, and we will not be talking about Forms Designer during the training, but probably sometime in November we'll be engaging you and giving you access to this development site where you can actually start looking at it. We'll also, as part of the beta, the other benefit to you is that we'll take your most complex forms and we'll make sure they work. So if you have something really complex that you definitely want to make sure works from day one, do get on the beta. Do send us email. Send email to support@qdabra.com, and we will sign you up for the beta and take a look at your forms and help you get up and running in Forms Designer. Thanks for that question, Shane. And thank you all for being here today. I want to thank Kirby especially for all the work she did to make sure the demo was going to work. We've been testing this for about a week now, and the developers have been making changes. And I want to thank our team in Nepal, also the Fuse Machines team. They did a great job on the initial demo here. Hope you guys all have a great day. We'll talk again next week.